on this one. Hold on. Everything is different for me today. Well, I know Channel 18's on here, so I'm not going to worry about it too much. I don't want to waste time.
This conference is no longer being recorded. This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Thanks, Caleb.
All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the meeting of the Harwich Conservation Commission for September 16th, 2020. It's being held by remote participation. I'd like to read a notice from Governor Baker's office on this remote participation. Bear with me for a second. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 18, and the Governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitation on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Town of Harwich Conservation Commission on September 16, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information and the general guidelines for remote participation by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the Town of Harwich website at www.harwich-ma.gov. For this meeting, members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so via recording on demand on the Harwich Channel 18 website or on our Town of Harwich YouTube page. So, I hope everyone's doing well. Let's get started. The first item on the agenda is a request for a change in plan. This is for 5 Brooks Road, map 5, parcel X1-1. It's a request to change and put in a deck in lieu of a patio and widen the stairs to driveway from entry porch. Do we have a representative here of the project?
Hi, good evening. Rob McPhee here on behalf of the owners of 5 Brooks Road. And thanks for having us this evening here on Zoom. The commission had approved this project in the past, and we're building this new house. And at the approved plan, we had a patio in this courtyard on the side of the house. The owner would like to change it from a patio to a deck. So we've worked on a plan to do so. And the new deck in lieu of the patio is a little smaller than the approved patio. And the front steps, which have a roof overhang, the platform is a little bit wider than the actual stairs going to the driveway. And they would like to widen the steps so they match the width of the approved platform. When you put those two together, we're still under the approved square footage from the board. So we're just coming to you to look for permission to make those changes.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us on this one? Oh, you're muted, Amy.
Sorry. Changes result in less hardscape than what we originally approved, so I would recommend approval of this minor plan change.
Okay, thank you. We have 4 commissioners here tonight, so I'll go through each of them to see if they have any comments or questions. And I'll start with Stan.
No questions or comment.
Okay. John?
Yeah, I don't have any questions or comments either.
And then Jim?
No comments from me.
Okay. And I also have no comments or questions, so I'm going to ask for a motion.
I'll make a motion to recommend the minor plan change for 5 Brooks Road.
Okay, could I have a second, please?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. You have an approval.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good night.
You too. Thanks.
Okay, next we have a request for emergency order of conditions for 1 Wawatesi Road, map 6, parcel F2-1. It's a request for a temporary repair of revetment to protect public health and safety. And I think is Don here to speak on this tonight?
Yeah, yes, through the chair. Don Monroe from Coastal Engineering. Mamie and I were down at the site. The owner was there as well. There's a couple of photographs of the cavity that's actually gotten even larger since we met on the site, Amy. Some more material has come out from behind, and Mike was actually able to crawl inside there, Mike Manchuk. So he's the contractor that's he's looked at it. He said he can get a concrete truck in where we talked about to pump the material down into the cavity. So there'll be somebody on the beach, no equipment on the beach. And the little sketch plan we gave you shows the area where we're going to take that tree down we talked about, that's the Russian olive, to back in, to get the truck to back in that little backyard area. The fence will have to come down too, right where the end of Wauwatasi is, but that fence is the owner's fence, and he realizes that'll have to come down. So we just want to fill that cavity in for now, so no kids or anything crawl inside there, because it's pretty dangerous right now, because one of those rocks up above is hard to say when it might fall, but if someone's in there and something falls, they could get hurt. So I think it makes sense to just fill it with some concrete, not to probably 3,000 PSI. And then when we rebuild the wall, which Mr. Krieger is planning to do this winter, they'll just remove all that solid concrete with the rock and then rebuild.
Okay, sounds pretty straightforward. Any further comments, Amy?
Just in my opinion, this is definitely a public health and safety hazard. The Kriegers own the wall, but the town has beachfront in front of that that's very actively used even this time of year. They've installed kind of just temporary caution fencing. I advise them to do that and take some photos just in case there was an incident. At least they can say they tried to take some precautions. It is definitely worse than when I saw it just a couple weeks ago with Dawn. We went down there today and there's more caving in. So it is time is of the essence for this one. And they do have a permit to rebuild that revetment. I don't have it here in front of me. I apologize. I can't remember if they have 1 or 2 years left on that permit, but I did speak with Mr. Krieger when Don was there and just emphasized that time is really of the essence, and this is a revetment rebuild that really should be done late this winter or first thing in the spring of next year. So no, I would recommend that you issue the emergency so that they can do this. I would like to add that I think if worst case scenario, things aren't working very well from the top down, they get in there and things don't work, I don't see the harm in letting them access over the beach. They would have to go to a town landing, probably C Street, put a machine on, put some sand over some of the groins to ramp up and go over. But I wouldn't want to see this project stop. I wouldn't want to see the fix be held up because we didn't allow them potential access on the beach if they needed to. So that's all I got.
I've got a question in that regard, Amy. So are they going to pump it in, or are they going to bring a machine in to deliver the concrete?
John can answer that.
Yeah, through the chair, Brad, good question. I had the contractor look at it to actually pump the concrete into the cavity. I hear Amy saying that she doesn't want that to become a non-starter if we're pouring the concrete into it and it doesn't hold or something, but I think it'll be fine because we'll make sure it's kind of a drier mix than a full slurry. But I think that might be wise, because if the cavity's even gotten, because I went a week and a half ago, and if Amy, you were just down there, a couple of days ago?
I was down there today, and the other commission, Stan and John will comment on this, but that collapse is way up, and we were like, how are they going to pump concrete up like that?
So Mike was trying to figure out if he could pump it down through the back of the wall, but because there was still plenty of wall there when we were looking at it, if that's changed, then I may have to have him bring in a couple of rocks from the if you allowed us to do it from the beach, it would make it easier, because we might have to throw a couple of rocks in there to take up some of the cavity instead of all concrete, because we don't want to throw 33 cubic yards of concrete in the hole. I wish I'd looked at it with you today.
No worries. And I'm not an expert in how much or what this is going to take. I just didn't want your options to be limited in terms of access if you needed it. The one stone is the only one that has fallen, but you can get in there and the cracks have increased and the erosion underneath.
So I think I've been there enough to know that if we had to bring a small machine in, we might be able to completely collapse it from the top with like a dingo machine or something like that if it looks that bad. But I think the option of being able to come across the beach might be valuable, since we're going to have to do it anyway when we rebuild the whole wall. I think that's what we'd have to have each option. So the machine that we might need, Brad, would be probably a front end loader or maybe a mini excavator if we had to get on the beach.
Yep. And so it's a possibility to have a truck pump from above. Do you have access to get a truck that could pump from above?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so
Yes.
I guess let's hear from everyone else, but my preference would be to try to pump from above if you can.
Yep.
And if not, then do the best you can by the beach. So,
Okay.
well, let's see what the commissioners have to say. Stan, any comments?
Yeah, Don, when I was first looking at it, I was looking off to the sides and facing it. The left side, you couldn't see that much that came away. The right side, and I didn't go climbing in those rocks like your person did. I couldn't tell how far that has kind of washed out. But then as we were looking at it and looked upwards from the rock, it looked like a real big washout from up above. And I have no idea on how far up that goes. And that would be like, so which is kind of, how do you fill that in?
We'd have to break, Stan, we'd have to break that down from the top.
Right, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
So I'll have the contractor go back. Amy, I'll have Mike go back tomorrow and see what we can do from the top, and I'll just let you know what we assess. Either way, we got to fix it. So I think we can do it from the top, Brad.
Okay. John,
Yeah,
any comments? Sorry, Stan.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree. Where are we here?
Go ahead, John. Yep.
Okay, I agree with what Stan said. It looks to me like there's one large rock there that's above the hole, and it looks kind of like that is only held in place by the concrete around it. So I don't know. I mean, that's probably what you're talking about when you're talking about collapsing things from above. That thing could let go pretty easily, and I don't know, it looks like that stuff should just get knocked down rather than pumping concrete up, but I don't understand. So I agree with Amy, whatever you have to do within reason seems like it should be done. I don't have anything else.
Okay, thanks, John. Jim?
Yeah, I'd just say if it's possible to do from above, that would be ideal. But otherwise, just have to do what you can. That's it.
Okay. All right. And how soon do you think this will happen, Don?
We should be able to get in there. I'm hoping the first thing next week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can get in it. No, I don't think we can get in there by Friday.
I have to, the emergency is valid for 30 days. So I'll start it on Monday. I'll start the 30 days on Monday.
Okay.
I need at least tomorrow to draft it anyways. So it wouldn't, at the earliest, it would be ready Friday.
Let's go Monday.
Okay.
Okay. Any comments from the audience? Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and move that we approve the request for an emergency order of conditions for 1 Wawa Tacey Road. Have a second,
I
please?
second it.
Okay, seconded by Stan. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, it's approved unanimously. All right, good luck.
All right, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Amy.
Yep, thank you. Okay, next we have on the agenda a request for determination of applicability for 17 Bayview Road, nominee trust, 17 Bayview Road, map 7, parcel J6-2. It's a proposed temporary construction access road, invasive tree removal. Is there a representative here tonight?
Good evening, Sean Riley, Coastal Engineering, representing the applicant. We have Jeremy Schaub from Wilkinson Ecological is also on the line. This is the property directly across the street from the Harbor Cottage that we came in for, I believe it was a couple of weeks ago, where we had that pathway that we shortened, that Peastone pathway that we discussed at length and shortened. There's a coastal bank, as we discussed, on that property. This RDA is for the property across the street that's under common ownership. You can actually see we had discussed pumping the septic system from here, and we said that we were removing the septic from the buffer and pushing it further ahead. You can see just how far from the resource area we're moving the septic. So that gives you an idea of where that's going from that other project. We had planned on coming in the spring with a final landscape plan. They've been so focused on the work across the street here, and with, as you can see, a very complicated site plan for all the work with the many different buildings on this property that they've got approved and moving ahead with a building permit. We had planned on coming in, and we still do, in the spring with a planting plan for this area. Here, we won't be coming in for any structures within this area. There is a grove of black locusts. You can see a number of them. Anybody that went out to the site could see the big grove of black locusts. The plan is to remove those in the future, and all the ones that are in the upland outside of the buffer zone, remove all those as well. Speaking with the contractor that's doing the work, you can see the size of the buildings. It makes sense to have access in and out with the larger vehicles out onto Snow Inn Road, rather than having them back up and turn around within just one entrance. So the thought is to create the access drive through onto Snow Inn Road, and that would require the removal of 8 black locust trees and some invasives within this area. We would have we're going to actually have a construction fence and siltation barrier at the 100-foot buffer that would then turn down and run along the access drive. The access drive would be essentially your stabilized construction entrance that would knock off any of the sediment for that length of the 50-foot, from the 50 to the 100-foot buffer. That would prevent any material from being tracked out onto Snow Inn Road. With that, I'll open it up to any questions you may have for myself or for Jeremy.
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us?
Sure. Pretty straightforward. Like to remove some invasive locust trees and a privet hedge in the buffer and partially remove the stone wall in order to just get another construction access in. I would just recommend that you condition that the access is to be reseeded with a Cape Cod grass mix upon completion, just to stabilize it in the meantime before the whole planting plan comes in. And we can talk about timing, because I know this is part of a bigger plan, but you will have to come back if you do intend to do any alteration in the 100-foot for any type of replanting. So I think as long as they stabilize it right now with the Cape Cod mix, if they're not quite ready to do the rest of the planting yet and come to us, that's fine. And again, it is pretty much invasives. So I'd recommend approval with a -3 determination with our condition about no chemical usage.
All right, thank you, Amy. Stan, I'll start with you. Any comments?
No comment, Brad.
Okay. John?
I just have a question. It all seems reasonable to me, but I guess I have a question about the replanting with grass, whether this construction access is going to be open for the duration of the construction project, right? So is there an interval after the usefulness of that construction access is done? Is there going to be a significant interval between that and when the whole re-landscaping thing is going to be done? In other words, I'm asking, will there be a window where it makes sense to plant grass there?
I don't foresee that there would be a window in between the two periods. I would think that as soon as the access drive is pulled up, that we would have a plan in place to replant that area along with the remaining buffer zone. We'd have that through and approved. So I wouldn't see that there would be, but you could condition it that we would seed if that did happen, but we don't see that happening.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense to me.
Okay. Jim, any comments?
Yeah, no comments other than just want to make sure it gets replanted one way or the other. That's it.
Okay. Any comments from members of the audience? All right, seeing none, would one of the members like to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve the RDA for 17 Bayview Road with a -3 determination.
Okay, can I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
Okay, and so we have Amy's suggested conditions as well. And all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Okay, next on the agenda, we have a request for amended order of conditions for 177 Forest Street, map 31, parcel C2. This is a replacement of an old hardscape and installation of new hardscape. Do we have a representative here tonight?
Yeah, Steve is here.
Okay. If you want to give us a summary of what you would like to do?
Sure. Basically, what I needed to do was, in order to conform to current regulations, I had to put in a totally new foundation. And that generated, I got sugar sand, so all of the hardscape around the house basically got destroyed. And I also had to put in the septic system going over and the water going over, which cut through the driveway. So I've got to redo the driveway. What I want to do is, let me just start with number one. And let me just say that this was a working cranberry farm until about 80 years ago. So a lot of it was hardscaped already for the farm equipment and everything else. What I'm doing here is replacing number one, is replacing the sidewalk that goes from the house to the small barn. And that's a 1-to-1. And the other one, that's number one. Number two is replacing the barn driveway with a deck and a patio. Essentially, the barn driveway, you drove into the barn on the first floor. There was no connection between the cellar and the first floor. You had to walk around. And I'm replacing that with a deck and a patio. The driveway itself, there is an 8-foot apron going around the barn, a ramp, and then a place to park outside the main driveway to the barn. So I'm replacing that. I want to add a deck off the east side of the breezeway. That's number 3. And that is, the east side is, when you're looking at the plan, it's on the right-hand side. And you can see it right there. It's a 6 feet by 12-foot deck. And there was a 4-foot walkway, sidewalk going on that side of the barn. So that's been removed, and we're doing this deck. Number 4 is replacing the sidewalk on the west side of the barn that was there with a stone wall perimeter. Basically, that whole thing was hardscaped. I just want like a perimeter around there and then do some plantings between that and the barn, about 5 feet. The next one, number 6. What I'm doing there is, with the new foundation, I have a egress from the east side, on the east side of the barn. I'm replacing that sidewalk. You just go straight up the side. And now I'm branching it over to the right, where there is a doorway in the cellar leading out. I need a little landing there and then a sidewalk going down to the corner of the barn there. On the north side of the new addition I have there, there's a door to the backyard, and I need to put a new a landing there with stairways going down to the ground. It's about 4 or 5 feet high. I need to back there also add pads for air conditioning and electric backup generator. And 9 is adding a lattice type brickwork with those spacings on that portion of the driveway that goes down the side of the barn there. It drops down about 10 feet, and I need to stabilize it. So that's that one there. Where I can, I will use existing rocks. There are brownstones I have from the foundation of the old barn that I had to replace. And on the driveway part, I can buy some like 18 by 24 inch cinder block type of thing where there is a crisscross lattice work that'll have open to the ground for drainage. In doing those, I am essentially reducing the hardscape from 266 to 190, and I am reducing the 266, and some of my additions here go 190 square feet over, giving a net 76 foot under, putting it back to native landscape. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Amy, do you have a summary for us on this one?
Sure. When we got this request for an amendment, I did reach out to Mr. Safran via email and just let him know that changes kind of this magnitude would require, in my opinion, a engineered site plan. He was hoping that you would approve this first and have that be kind of an as-built. I explained that's not typically how we do things. The site has been in construction for several years now, so it's really hard. We are kind of going on what, and the applicant is saying, what was the previous hardscape, because I don't have a plan that shows what the previous hardscape was. The plan that we were given when we were asked to approve the renovation to this property did not show that information. So I'm not saying it's not accurate, but I just have nothing to compare it to. And that's typically what we ask for in site plans is existing versus proposed on a site plan. And then, I mean, if a site has been, if there hasn't been that hardscape in several years now, it comes to it, we start talking about, well, it's been a few years since that hardscape existed. Is it replacement or is this new hardscape we're talking about that needs to be mitigated for? So I can't recommend approval of this as is. And I also would like to chat, you know, Steve and I can chat about, you know, kind of getting more consistent progress updates on the property. And just want to remind you that the permit does lapse in March. So those are my comments. I'm not saying you should deny it. I just said I don't think we're ready for a recommendation of approval for this.
Okay, thank you, Amy. I guess I'll ask the commissioners if they have any comments. John?
I agree with Amy's assessment. I have a hard time following what's in the plan, and I would prefer to see an engineered site plan before we proceed with this.
Okay, thanks, John. Stan?
Yeah, I agree too. I'm not ready to approve any amendments at this point. There's too many things going on here. There's 9 items. There's no, I agree with Amy, there's really no way to compare what was there on the plan versus what's being proposed. Yeah, I wouldn't be comfortable with this.
All right, thanks, Stan. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with the previous comments.
Okay. All right, and I fall in the same category of agreement as well. So I guess I'll put that back to you, Mr. Saffron, if you can meet what Amy's looking for.
I'll be able to meet with Amy. You know, I live here on site, so I'll be able to get with Amy and we'll go through a bunch of things.
Okay, that sounds good. All right, well, thanks for calling in tonight.
Hang on one second.
Mm-hmm.
In order for him, I think it would be prudent to give him a continuance, and that way the continuance is on the record. He doesn't have to re-notify abutters, things like that. If we continue to a date certain, I think a month out at this point would be. I don't think 2-3 weeks is enough, and especially if he does have to do a site plan or something else, it's going to be potentially more than a month. But I would recommend that you at least continue to October 21st to kind of keep that as a placeholder.
That I like.
Okay, that's okay with you? Okay, well, with that in mind, I'll make a motion that we continue this hearing for the request for amended order of conditions for 177 Forest Street until October 21st, 2020. Can I have a second, please?
Second.
Okay, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, we've got a continuance for that one.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, next, we have a notice of intent for 46 Indian Trail, map 34, parcel K3-2. It's a proposal for a new dwelling with appurtenances. They have asked for a continuance. What date are they looking to continue to until, Amy?
October 21st, please.
Okay, then I'm going to move that we grant that continuance until October 21st, 2020. Have a second, please. Okay, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. All right, next we have a notice of intent for 42 Julian Road, map 16, parcel F4. It's a proposal to remove an existing single-family dwelling and construction of a new dwelling and attached garage, including installation of a septic system and utilities with grading and hardscape. Is there a representative here for the project?
Hi, good evening. This is Stephanie Sequin. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I'm with Ryder and Wilcox, and I'm representing Miriam Manning and Patrick Kennelly, who are the owners of the property at 42 Julian Road. It's just under an acre. There's a wooded swamp in road first to that wetland, and just a little part of the property is within the between the 50 and 100 foot buffer to the wetland. This property also falls within land subject to coastal storm flowage. The 100-year flood zone elevation is 11. We traced the 11-foot contour and measured the contour, and the slope is between 4-to-1 and 10-to-1. So by DEP's policy, it's not steep enough to be considered a coastal bank. So therefore, we just have simply land subject to coastal storm flowage, and there is no buffer to the flood zone in this instance. Presently, there's an existing one-story dwelling, 3 bedrooms on a crawl space foundation. There's a detached shed. Hardscaping consists of a stone patio and some walkways. There are 2 pervious driveways that access the property. And the existing building and shed are partially located within the 100-foot buffer to the wetland and entirely within the land subject to coastal storm flowage. The existing septic system was upgraded in 2012 and consists of a septic tank, pump chamber, and a leaching system that's located up the hill a little ways. The existing house was built in 1937, and the owners are proposing to remove the existing building, the existing dwelling, including the foundation and all the hardscaping, and building a new 2-story building on a full foundation. The new house is going to be located outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetland and outside of the land subject to coastal storm flowage. A new septic system will be installed to serve the new dwelling. That all the septic system components are also located outside of the flood zone and outside of the 100-foot buffer. The only thing that will remain, we're proposing a detached 2-car garage with a 2nd story that will have living space above. That is to be located within the 100-year flood zone, but outside of the 100-foot buffer to the wetland. We're proposing to leave the existing septic tank and pump chamber to service that detached building, but that will be connected to the new leaching system. I mentioned to Amy, after we submitted the original site plan, indicated that the existing shed would be removed, but the owners have decided they would like to keep it, at least for the time being. So I will get a revised plan into you indicating that. So with these proposed changes, the removal of the existing house and the hardscaping associated with the house is going to result in a decrease of 440 square feet of building and hardscaping within the 100-foot buffer to the wetland. So I think it's a good thing that's being proposed here, taking an existing building out of the buffer and replacing it with a new building further away and completely outside of jurisdiction. So I've included in the narrative and on the site plan our typical construction notes and construction protocol. And, I've showed a limit of work and a fabric sill fence to be installed along the limit of work prior to construction. The access to the work area will be from the existing driveways. All the demolition debris will be either placed directly into trucks or into a dumpster to be removed. There won't be any stockpiling of demolition debris on site. So I think that's it, and I would be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Amy, do you have any summary comments for us?
Sure. As Stephanie stated, even with the keeping of the shed, there's a net reduction of 440 square feet of hardscape within our jurisdiction, which is a positive thing. It's across the street from wetlands, and the new garage would have to meet floodplain building code standards. It's pretty close because the slab's at 10.5 and floodplain's at 11 here, so it shouldn't be an issue. And I'd recommend that if the shed's in kind of rough shape, so and it straddles the 100-foot buffer zone. If they do end up having to replace it, ideally having it go outside the 100-foot buffer would be good, but if they already have a net reduction in keeping it. So I would just suggest if they do end up replacing the shed, that it be no larger than what they already have and has to be in the same footprint or less. And I would recommend approval of the project with our conditions regarding no fertilizer, pesticide, herbicide use within our jurisdiction, which would not only be the 100-foot buffer, but the floodplain.
All right, thanks, Amy. All right, let's have comments, commissioners, questions from the commissioners, starting with Stan.
There we go. I don't have any questions on this, so I kind of agree with Amy's comments.
All right, thanks, Stan. John?
Yeah, I just have one question, which is looking at the site plan, it looks like the existing shed has a corner in what I take to be the proposed new driveway there. So I'm wondering how that works and whether you wouldn't end up moving the shed or rebuilding it anyway.
Yeah, we actually on the revised plan have reconfigured the proposed driveway expansion. So we'll have to just nudge it a little bit to the southeast, I guess, to avoid that shed.
Sorry, Stephanie, I didn't have a chance to put that in their Dropbox before the meeting today.
Okay. But yes, we'll so that would just mean the driveway will just have to shift a little bit to the south to clear the shed.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Otherwise, I don't have any other questions or seems reasonable to me.
Okay. Jim?
Yeah, I agree with Amy's comments, particularly about no fertilizers or chemicals in any area in Conservation Commission jurisdiction. And otherwise, it looks good. No other comments.
All right, thank you. I guess I have just one question on timing. Is this a project slated for the winter, this fall? When do you think it'll occur?
I know, hold it, sorry, I have two things open. Okay. We're working on the final architectural drawings for the house. So I guess in answer to your question, I don't know. I don't think it'll be starting this fall. I don't think we're ready. So I would think the earliest would be in 2021.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Manning, I'm not sure if she may be on the line, and I don't know if she has a schedule or not.
Okay.
Is there, I guess, why are you asking?
Well, that's a good question to return. I'm just thinking of, I don't think there's any really need to condition the project, but across the way that wetlands is, it's really just unusual habitat for amphibians. And if you go there on a spring night, it can be deafening, all the noise from the peepers. So I don't know if there's any construction protocols that could be done. I mean, you're not working right next to the wetland, you're across the street. I guess I can't really think of anything that could be done other than just containing the site. And if you had any large equipment that would need to stage, you wouldn't want to stage, across the road on the bank or anything. But I don't think that's planned anyways. But I was asking because it is kind of a sensitive area across the street.
Yeah. To me, it seems like there's plenty of space on the property for construction vehicles. Julian Road's a public way, so I wouldn't expect that they would be parking on the road. I guess the only suggestion is if you wanted a silt fence on the other side of the road, just where the wetland is the closest.
Yeah, I would say maybe only if the time of year, if peak construction occurred, in spring. Otherwise, I don't think it would be necessary.
Yeah, so maybe that could be something to be discussed at the pre-construction meeting. Whenever that happens, maybe Amy could evaluate it then, whether she thinks it might be necessary.
That's a good suggestion, and I can't say if it's really a concern or not. It just it's something that just came to me. So yeah, that'd be a really good idea.
Okay.
Any other thoughts in that regard from anybody? Okay, seeing none. Any comments from the audience? All right. Would one of the commissioners like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve the notice of intent for 42 Julian Road with the normal language about restricting use of any chemical applications within the 100-foot buffer.
Okay. Could I have a second, please?
I'll second it.
All right. Seconded by Stan. Any additional comments on the discussion?
Yeah, just to mention that the no fertilizer or chemical application would also be in the flood zone area.
Yep, that's a good point. Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, the motion passes unanimously. All right, thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you very much. Good night.
All right, good night. Okay, so moving on to orders of conditions, and we have one for 25 Grey Neck Lane, map 11, parcel X8-6. It was a tear down and rebuild of a house.
Let me know if you have any comments on the draft. Very little changed. The plan of record changed, and instead of 3 additions, it's a demo rebuild, which is actually smaller than what we approved to begin with. So.
Okay, I don't have any comments.
I don't have any comments.
Yeah, I'm okay.
All right. Did you say you're good, Jim?
Yeah, no comments for me.
Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and move that we approve the order of conditions for 25 Grey Neck Lane, map 11, parcel X8-6.
Second.
Second, please. All right, seconded by Jim. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Motion carries to approve the order. All right, next on the agenda, we have a request for an extension permit. And this is for 11 Shore Road, approved demolition of existing motel and construction of a single-family home. They're requesting a 1-year extension. What's the story here, Amy?
So this is, sorry, the permit is expiring, and actually technically permits that are open anytime between March and still currently during the state of emergency do remain open, but they need a little extra time. They need to do an as-built plan. This is a very large project. They still have some invasive little bit of work to do, which they would like to do, kind of have an invasive management condition in their certificate of compliance when they get it. But I need to get back out there and do some extensions. The as-built site or inspections, the as-built still needs to be done. And I think I had recommended that, so if Stephanie's still on the line, she can chime in, but a 1-year extension just to make sure that everything is correct. And if there's that way also, if there's anything that needs to be rectified, they have an active permit to do so. So I would recommend a 1-year extension for them. This is their first extension.
Okay. Any comments from the commissioners on this? It sounds pretty straightforward. Stan?
No comment, Brad.
All right, thanks. John?
No comment.
All right, thank you. And Jim?
No comments from me.
All right, thanks. All right, I'll go ahead and move that we approve the request for a 1-year extension for 11 Shore Road, SC 32-2299. Could I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, next we have the Ayer Lane Homeowners Association. It's the association beach between Pine and Pilgrim Roads, and they're looking for a 3-year extension for maintenance activities.
I think a representative from Ayer Lane Association, Helene, might be on the line. If you want to chat, Helene. If not, I will take care. I can speak to it, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like.
Sure, please.
So the Ayer Lane Association on their beach between Pine and Pilgrim Roads got a permit in 2005. It was a 5-year permit back then to do maintenance activities that covered sand nourishment and raking. Now, since 2005, the town has done a town-wide sand nourishment permit that would allow them, with the conditions that we have under our permit, to put sand on their beach in a case-by-case basis. So, but they still would like to do some raking, and the permit has routinely got extensions throughout the years. The permit would have expired in July, but because of the governor's order due to COVID, it is still active under the act. Right now, I do want to know kind of what their practices are right now. Back in 2005, when we permitted this, we didn't have the town, our beach raking regulations in our regulations like we do now. So one, I kind of want to get a better handle on what their activity is, how often they do it. And then we talk about an extension after that. And then make sure that if they aren't doing things according to our regulation, if they were doing things according to their permit, but our regulations changed, they need to be doing things according to our regulations on beach cleaning. So they are still active under the act. So I don't think it's a huge rush, especially because I don't know if they're on the call tonight. But those are my thoughts.
Thanks, Amy. And do we have much on reporting? Annual reports or any summaries of their activity?
You don't.
Okay.
So we have, their permit was fairly broad. And hang on one second. I'm going to find the special conditions. I'm not finding them. So it was supposed to only happen once each summer. I don't know if that's the case. And there's other things about what type of vehicles can be used, where the seaweed was to be taken for disposal at an appropriate place. So we didn't have monitoring or reporting conditions on the permit, which if they're only doing it once a year, I think that's a quick and easy notification that they can be doing. But I just want to make sure that it is only being done once a year as the permit suggests. So. And I want to give the Air Lane Association, I did send them the login for tonight. I want to give them a chance to comment too. So maybe we put it off till next meeting.
Sure, that's fair. All right, so this is, do we need to continue an extension request?
Well, I have a question.
Sure.
If we're not sure what they're doing in terms of the raking and everything, is this actually, I mean, I think we need to have them document exactly what they're doing, like Amy suggested, but is that really an extension at this? Well, I guess it's still an extension. We're just trying to clarify what they're doing.
Yeah, I think first we're going to clarify what they're doing and then decide after that if everything looks pretty minor that you would grant them an extension, but they would have to follow our current beach raking guidelines. So I think we should just continue so they, and you can motion to continue. It's good for the record.
Okay.
To just, hopefully we can get them on the line next time.
Yeah. And so to follow up on Stan's thoughts, you know, is there a point when we ask them to refile because they really need to document what they're doing to meet our standards? Is that a situation, or would it just be an extension?
It potentially could be. If they're really doing it once a year, I'm not as concerned about it. If they are doing it, you know, the town does it at a large frequency. Places like Old Mill Point and other places do it once or twice a week, potentially. There, I think documenting is very, very important. But here, if it is a once a year, you know, a notification might be a notification that they're doing it would be helpful. And then just making sure that they're using the proper types of equipment. But that's up to you. You could have them refile. From what it seems like their permit is, I mean, just a once a year rake seems pretty minor to me.
Right. No, I agree, but it does bring up the whole process question on, you know, how many extensions do you get for a beach cleaning?
I agree.
Before you refile again. And we don't want people to go through extra cost and time unless it's necessary. Mm-hmm. But I mean, do we have a rule of thumb on that? Do we have 3 extensions and we want them to refile, or is it just hasn't come up before?
I would have to, I don't have our regulations here in front of me, but I'd have to take a look and see if we have a cap. I think we had discussed adding that language in that, you know, one extension, you know, 1 3-year extension or something, but
yeah,
we haven't, I don't think we officially did it yet.
Okay. Yeah, we did talk about that. All right, I'll go ahead and ask if John and Jim have any questions on this too, starting with John.
Yeah, when was the permit originally issued?
2005. 15 years ago.
So this would be the 5th extension?
It was a 5-year permit. Beach activities can be a 5-year permit. So they got an extension. Then they were valid actually because after 2008, when we had the economic crash, the state gave a permit extension act. So this permit was valid until 2014 under the Permit Extension Act.
Wow.
And then it was extended in 2014 until 2017. And in 2017, it was extended until 2020. And I think it was, I can look at, we would have minutes, pretty good minutes from 2017. So I'll go back and take a look and see what our discussion was then about, my guess is it seemed like minor maintenance activities, but I'll be in touch with the association the end of this week. We'll take a look and we'll go from there. Sound okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Jim, any thoughts?
Yeah, it just seems with the amount of time that's gone by, it might be a good idea to generally revisit the permit.
Yep.
Yep, I tend to agree. Okay, well, for now, I'll move that we continue the extension request for Ayers Lane Homeowners Association until, should we
October
say the
7th.
2nd? Oh, the 7th, okay, October 7th,
I think we can do it the 7th. Yeah, I think that's okay.
Okay. All right, can I have a second, please?
Second.
All right, seconded by John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion carries. So now we're moving on to requests for certificate of compliance, and I'll let Amy describe what she has for us.
Yep, I'll go over it quickly, but I do believe Mark Burgess is on the phone as well for this one, 651 Main Street, as well as 47 Sequatum, if you have questions. So this was this request for cert of compliance for a ramp and flow addition to an existing licensed structure. You didn't vote on it last time because I hadn't put the approved orders and plans in Dropbox. I apologize for that. So now you had that information as well as the as-built. There are some slight alterations. I'm sure Mark can go through them if you need to, but none have an impact, in my opinion, to the resource area or the interest that is greater than what we permitted. So I would recommend a cert of compliance with a condition on off-season storage. And this is one of those properties where some years it is stored properly and some years it isn't. So we just want to get a handle on that one.
Okay, let's see if the commissioners have any questions. Mark's here to help us if we do. Stan, any comments?
No comment.
All right, John.
I'm all set. Thank you. No comments.
Okay, and Jim?
No comments.
Okay. And I would just say to Amy's comments on compliance with off-season storage, just whatever we can do to try to get that point to home.
At this point, people have all been notified with warnings. At this point, if there's non-compliance, there would be fines.
Oh, good. Okay. All right.
If I may add, the contractor that was largely responsible for that has sold the business. So it won't be him doing it anymore.
Okay. That's I suppose, good news. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and act on this one. I move that we approve the certificate of compliance for 651 Main Street, ramp and float. Can I have a second, please? All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, you're all set. And then on to 47 Sequatum Road.
This was a dock on Long Pond. There was an issue with the documents last time on Dropbox. For some reason, they weren't loading properly. So we reloaded them. Hopefully, we could see them. Hopefully, you could too. The existing, or what was proposed versus what was submitted for the as-built or compliance letter. So this one was built accordingly. It will be stored. This is the first year I think on it, so it will be stored on the upland. I've talked to the owners about that, and they seem to be perfectly understanding on that. And I would recommend a cert of compliance with the condition of off-season storage.
All right. Any comments among the commissioners? Go ahead and speak if you have any. Otherwise, we can field a motion.
I'll move to approve the certificate I could talk, maybe it would help. I move to approve the certificate of compliance for dock on Long Pond at 47 Sequatum.
Second.
All right, seconded by Jim, I think. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries unanimously. And lastly, the cert for 15 Shore Road beach cleaning.
Yep, I think this property is changing hands and it's just a hindrance on the deed from what I understand. The permit's expired. They can't do any work under it anyways. If the new owner wanted to do any work, they would need a permit to do it. So I'll probably write a cover letter to that effect, but I recommend a certificate of compliance to so the property can change hands.
Okay. I'd say if there's any comments from the commissioners, please go ahead. Otherwise,
Yeah, I have one comment. Just, Amy, what you just mentioned, the letter indicating that a new owner would need to get a permit, so that would be brought to their attention.
We actually are keeping an eye on the real estate transactions in town. We look at the when properties sell, and we've been sending welcome to the neighborhood type letters to anybody who lives near a wetland resource. So they would get it anyways, but I would include it. I think it's as good as part of the record here. But we have been, we have a boilerplate letter essentially that we send to any new homeowners anyway. So they'll get double this time.
Okay, thank you.
all right. Would someone like to make a motion on this one?
I'll move to approve the certificate of compliance for 15 Shore Road for beach cleaning.
And I'll second it.
All right, seconded by Stan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. All right, moving on to discussion. I guess I'll let you introduce the items, Amy, and provide us with summaries.
Sure. So the first item is a request by Robert Eagle, the owner of 38 South Chatham Road. He is requesting to prune a few lower limbs off of 5 to 6 pitch pines that are across the street from his property, as well as the neighbors. He is doing it also on behalf of his neighbor. Prune a couple lower limbs off the pitch pines that are on our property in order to just maintain and enhance their view a little bit. He's done this a few years ago, to a couple other trees that were more in his view. These are more in his neighbors. But it is not, it's on our property and it's also within the buffer zone. So technically, so he has an administrative review permit, because that's typically how I would deal with pruning a few lower limbs. But again, because it's on your property, I thought maybe it's just worthy of a quick discussion here tonight, hopefully. At this time, I would not recommend doing any other work like pruning down of other vegetation. I think that potentially could be a larger application, but I think what he's asking to do right now, and if he's going to use the same contractor that he used before, who did a very nice job, and the trees that they had limbed before are very healthy, I don't think there's going to be any impact. So I would recommend, and he is on the line, he can tell you more, but I would recommend that you let him prune. I would meet with the contractor, just a few of the lower limbs off those pitch pines. So Robert, if you have anything else to add or introduce yourself to the commission.
Well, first of all, I want to apologize. I didn't realize I've been on all the time, and I'm afraid to turn it off because I wasn't sure I'd get back on again. But it's been a real good learning experience for me, just to see what you people go through all the time. I appreciate your efforts. It was done 5 years ago, actually, I think. that Michael Roma did the work, and he tells me he's quite busy. He could do the pine trees, the lower limbs of the pine trees, but he needed to have somebody else do the brush across the street. And so I haven't found anybody yet, but I'd work with you, Amy, and figure out that if it's approved.
Yeah, again, I can't recommend the brush, the lower shrub, the shrub and other tree cutting, but I can recommend the limbing, the minor limbing for now.
Okay, that's fine.
Can I ask, is the lower brush for the viewscape, or is that for another purpose to trim that?
Eventually, it might grow up into his view, but it's not quite there yet.
Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob.
No, I think that's right. It certainly has grown more since 5 years ago, but I'm happy with whatever you decide.
Okay. All right. Any comments from the commissioners, starting with Stan?
No, I don't have any problem with trimming those limbs as we had just discussed.
Okay. John?
Right, I don't have any problem either, just trimming the lower branches, that seems fine to me.
All right, thanks. And Jim?
Yeah, I don't really see any issues with as far as harm to the resource areas. Amy, is this Conservation Commission property?
It is, and that's why I also put it for your attention tonight and not just something I would approve.
Okay. Well, yeah, I don't think I'm in favor of it on the grounds that, that's this is a natural conservation area, and, that provides buffer so we don't see houses if we're enjoying that natural conservation area. So that's just my opinion on it.
All right, thanks, Jim. I think I feel that way in terms of the ground cover and the brush. I didn't get out to the site, so I don't have a good sense of, a couple of pine branches are a factor. Is there any history here, Amy, of having Vista, pruning before it became conservation land, or has it been, I think this was a recent acquisition, or has this been for a long time?
Bob, how long have you owned the property?
I believe it was 2002.
Okay. It is a property nearby, Brad, that there was some Vista pruning that had happened without permit, but it wasn't here. Mr. Eagle came in front of us a couple years ago for a couple other limbs on other trees. And since then, I mean, the shrubs, if you go by, his house is up on a hill and so is the neighbors. So the shrubs and understory trees we're talking about are 15, 20 feet high. And then the pitch pines, it would be like one or two lower limbs at most off of each tree. So, but there hasn't, the lower vegetation has not been altered in front of his property.
All right. Well, I guess I would be in favor of the trimming of the pitch pine branches if they were specifically, selected by yourself as to which ones. And I don't know if you were planning on, if you were planning to do that already, or if I think having your participation, given that it's conservation land, would be very valuable.
Yeah, I don't mind at all, and that was what I was planning on doing because it is your land. So I just want to make sure it's the minimal kind of we need to do in order to get them a little bit of a better view out. But
yep.
I am happy to be the contractor.
Yep, and I do appreciate you bringing it forward this way so we could talk about it. All right, do you want to have a vote or just an agreement to let you handle it administratively?
Why don't we do a vote to let me handle it administratively, please?
Okay. Well, then I'm going to move that we approve the request for minor Vista pruning at 38 South Road or across the street at 0 South Chatham Road, to be handled administratively by the conservation agent. Can I have a second, please? Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Any comments from the audience? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay. So the motion passes 3-1. All right. Thank you.
Bob, I will,
Okay.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
I'll be in touch, okay?
Yes, Amy. Thank you.
All right. Okay. If you want to carry on with the list, Amy.
Sure. I know we have a couple people, Lindsay Strode from Cape Organics on the line, as well as, I don't know if Mark Burgess is also representing. Lindsay, if you didn't see my note, it's either #6 or I think it's *6 in order for you to speak from a phone. And they just wanted to have a really early discussion with you about possible erosion control options at 0 North Road, which belongs to the people who own 48 North Road. There are existing fiber rolls at the site that are starting to deteriorate. And with that, I mean, they know they have to file with conservation eventually. And they know that we can't tell them what wouldn't exactly be approved. But I will let Lindsay and or Mark speak to you.
Did I push the right button?
You got it.
did.
Good night. All right. Lindsay Strode, Cape Organics, thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you this evening. Just a little background on this property. We went through the commission, got permission, and did a fiberol soft solution at the urging of the commission 15 years ago. This is what I'm assuming, Amy, you were able to get these folks the pictures?
Yes, I did. And a couple of them also went to the site today with me.
Oh, awesome. Great. So you can see that we certainly got our money's worth out of the fiber rolls. They are indeed deteriorating, and we're looking for some input relative to what we might consider for the next step to secure the property. Obviously, there's no house imminently threatened, but there is the deck and then ultimately the road. Mark and I were going to talk earlier. I don't know that we got to the point of determining at what rate things are eroding, but as you can see, it's somewhat significant. As you're looking at the picture that shows the bank with the existing pier to the left, it's undermined significantly, and that's probably 2 or 3 feet, if not more, in certain spots leading up to the stump that's on the right that is approximately the property line on that north side. So what we're thinking of is a single sheet pile vinyl wall just landward of where the existing created marsh is, and to give them extended protection. The challenge here, again, Mark can speak to this as well, but you have a stone revetment to the north, and then you have a bulkhead to the north. And this particular property is right at the bend or apex of the river. And if you're there on a strong outgoing tide, it's pretty significant. The current does run through there. It's relatively deep, and the pressures on that bank are pretty significant. I don't know that there's all that much refractory energy transferred along those 2 other structures to the north, but that being said, there is some evidence that, there is energy sliding around the corner, and that is the steeper portion the area that's conservation trust land, that small wedge between the house that sits right out in the river, the old Mary McGrath, I think her house, and then the Doyles, is that property there has a very shallow angle of repose. Interesting aside is, from what I understand, this was the 48 North Road was either a general store and or post office. It burned at some point, and then they just pushed it across the road right into the river. When we did the initial excavation and stabilization, we were coming out with all sorts of broken glass and debris that's in there that's pretty unconsolidated. So that's not virgin material to begin with. It's really just fill that was obviously pre-DEP, turn of the century. So that being said, I'm happy to entertain some more conversation about what we might look forward to in submitting a notice of intent.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any additional summary comments, Amy, on this?
Just a couple. I would say, I mean, they'll have to do an alternatives analysis. It's really good in knowing that, I mean, you got 15 years out of these fiber rolls in a really dynamic situation. Usually fiber rolls are a 7 to 10 year max solution. So they definitely got their life out of these. Because it's not a formal hearing, we really can't say what, I can't recommend what would or wouldn't be approved. I think an alternatives analysis for looking at a variety of options would be needed, given its proximity, and also taking into account the proximity to the road, which over time would be a concern. But everything from soft solutions to hard solutions and different types. You had mentioned a sheet pile vinyl wall. Make sure you consider things like overwash bulkheads and look at a few other things. You do have a small strip of salt marsh there. So I will just say in general, not even necessarily talking about this property, but whenever you have salt marsh and you put a bulkhead in, I have concerns about impacts to that salt marsh as a result of a hard structure. So you can just say that I'm happy to review once you do a notice of intent before you submit it. If you want to go over it with me or have me review things with you before you submit, I'm happy to do that.
All right, thanks, Amy.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Can you hear me? Mark Burgess, Chauffeur Consulting. So yeah, we looked at a lot of the options and we discussed them on the site. Part of it is cost benefit, of course. We did look at an overwash bulkhead to protect the marsh. And if we did a short overwash bulkhead just seaward of the marsh, that would hold the tow at that point. You would still need another wall behind the marsh to protect the shoreline itself. The advantage there is that the bulkhead on the landward side doesn't have to be designed to go that deep because it already is going to have its own tow protection from a second wall. The downside is the cost of putting in two walls instead of one. But the landward wall, if it was only a single wall, it would have to be pretty deep because it has to be designed for the time when the river will come to it. And from the site conditions and from what the Doyles have said, the river is changing. It's a sandbar right out in the middle of the river that's headed towards them. And that's a natural process as the river bend tightens, and eventually it'll wash through the neighbor's yard to the south. That's probably not in our lifetime, but that's what the rivers are trying to do. That's what they all do. So we're trying to look at cost benefit, long-term, short-term. In the interest of the cost of fiber rolls, even if we got another 15 years out of them, you still have to do it again at such and such a cost. So they're looking for a better alternative that still blends with the environment, that gives the protection, but the river is coming at them, and there's no way to stop that. We thought about a rock revetment. That's been done in other places along this river, but I just don't think there's enough room for it. So we did look at all these different options. We could put back what's there, but with sea level rise and storms and with the river action coming towards it, it's just going to eat away at the bank above it. So I don't see that as any kind of a long-term solution, and I wouldn't see them last as long as the first solution, because the site conditions are going to get more energy there as time goes on. So we did look at one wall, two walls, natural solution, and a revetment. I'm still torn between the one wall, two wall. I think the best solution would be two walls if it's cost effective. So we can look into that part. We're still doing our analysis, but we just wanted to get feedback from the commission, knowing that a soft solution has been tried. It was reasonably successful, but again, the cost to do it, knowing it's going to fail in 15 years or less, is not the desired outcome at this point in time. That's it for me.
Okay.
But I'd be interested in what you guys have to say.
All right. So from our end, we're being asked to participate in a discussion. We don't have a proposal before us. So I will ask the commissioners if they have any comments, but there's no obligation to comment unless you feel like there's something you want to say. So I'll start with Stan.
Yeah, Mark, I think you kind of answered one of my questions, because I was going to say, why couldn't we go back to the fiber rolls again if they lasted 15 years? And it sounds like that could be, I mean, because is the bank any different that would prevent them from lasting as long as they did before?
I think so. The slope behind the slope behind the fiber rolls now is exactly vertical. The fiber rolls only go up to about the mean high water line, maybe one roll above that. So when we get any kind of a storm tide, there's no protection for the rest of the bank up to the street level. So that's going to continue to get eaten away. So we're not really solving the problem by putting just the fiber rolls back.
If it wasn't for the road, I would be against doing anything there. I mean, there are other parts of the river that have a lot of erosion going on where there's natural land that's being eaten away. For example, just east of where we're looking, just the other side of the river, you see there's a huge corner that's being eroded naturally in the river. And there's a few other spots further south that I'm aware of. I guess the other concern I have is if you do put any kind of bulkhead or anything there, there's a lot of marsh grass or marsh just south of that area. I mean, just past this corner that we're talking, and even in your picture north of the area. And what could be the impact on those areas by putting in a hard solution like that?
I think you'd have to taper it and stop it far enough away from what's the existing marsh that's there, to avoid any kind of end effects and such.
Yeah, that's, I'm not sure how I feel about all this, but that's all I have right now.
Nobody said this was going to be easy.
All right, thanks, Dan. And I guess if I can jump in and just ask, from a regulatory standpoint, this would be a variance project, correct? This would be a project that would not be approved without a variance.
You will need a variance if they're going for a hard solution.
Right. And, the town of Harwich itself was denied a project down at Red River Beach where we pursued a hard solution, and DEP in fact came in and said it couldn't support it. So it is very much a variance situation, and myself, I'm not certain that it would qualify, although we don't have the proposal in front of us. So I think that's important for everyone to understand. All right, John, any comments?
Yeah, I have a few things. One is I still don't quite understand what's going on there right now. I mean, looking just at the bank, just north of where, or I guess under the deck or just north of the deck there, it looked to me like the bank had been undermined and the fiber roll was in the undermined part of the bank. Almost like it had been intentionally dug out to accommodate the fiber roll. And then there were sticks going in like this that looked like they were there to hold the fiber roll in place. And then seaward from those things, there were some, looked like they'd been there a lot longer, vertical sticks, but they were covered with weed or whatever, marine growth. So it wasn't clear what that was. Were those seaward things, are they the remains of a previous soft solution? And is the stuff that was under the bank in this kind of undermined placement, is that where they were installed, or were they washed into the erosion?
So in speaking, Lindsay Stroh here, so in speaking to your first question relative to the seaward vertical stakes, those stakes were put in to hold 20-inch fiber rolls that would form the seaward limit of the vegetated bench that now supports the marsh grass in front of the landward toe of the previous project. There was some repair done, not by me, by someone else, that used those stakes on an angle to help hold things together several years ago. When we did this project, we did not, that area was undermined underneath the deck, or very close to being underneath the deck. So we basically put our fiber rolls in, secured them, and then backfilled with comparable material to create some bulk behind the fiber rolls. Does that answer your question?
Sort of. Just so, when this was done 15 years ago, how much further seaward did the bank go from where the vertical piece is right now?
From the seaward portion of those vertical stakes?
No, I'm not talking. Well, okay, let's talk about relative to the seaward vertical stakes. Where was the bank 15 years ago?
It was where, it's kind of hard to see, but there are some remaining fiber rolls. That was where it was. It was approximately a 4-foot wide bench that we vegetated that exists today.
So I think, John, what he's saying is that where you saw that row of filter fabric way into the bank, landward into the bank, that was the extent of the fiber rolls when they were put in. And that was also the seaward extent, the landward extent of the vertical slope when the fiber rolls were put in. Is that right, Lindsay, to say?
Correct.
Okay. Does that make sense, John?
Yeah. So there's been significant erosion there. So my the other question is, how far north is this all going from where the pier is right now?
It's proposed to stay in the same footprint that the fiber rolls were installed in. It's about 70 feet. Is that what, Lindsay, is it 70 feet?
Approximately, yes.
Yep.
So my concern, one of my concerns about this sort of follows on a little bit from what Stan was saying, which I've certainly seen situations elsewhere where a revetment is built and then a gap left in the revetment, and there's significant erosion where the gap is left. And I'm concerned that there's going to be a bit of unprotected shore there north of this, between where you're talking about doing the work and where I get it, 48 North Road there, right, that sticks out into the river. which I would think would be getting more pressure as a result of putting a hard solution where you're talking about putting a hard solution. And I believe that is Harwich Conservation Trust property there. Am I right about that? Furthermore, it's closer to the road, so it would seem to me that you're taking a risk of hastening undermining of North Road just north of this property. So I would be very concerned about that. I don't know if the same is a problem south of here because there's salt marsh and other stuff there, and it's not clear to me what would happen there. But on an outgoing tide, I would think the river is slamming into that property, which is, of course, what you're worried about. But just north of there, you leave something unprotected, which I would think would be created. You're just deferring the problem onto somebody else's property, and I'm not sure what to think about that.
No, that would be something that you would have to look at as well, is to look and through when you do your notice of intent, how you're going to eliminate or decrease as much as possible effects on adjacent properties if you are proposing a hard solution.
Mm-hmm. Understand. Anybody else? I guess not, right? Okay.
I think
Lindsay,
we might have, I don't know if we lost Brad. Brad, are you still on?
I see him there. I mean, I see.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I'm here. I guess, Jim, any comments from Jim?
Oh, sorry.
I don't have any other comments.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope that helped.
As much as it can, we understand. We'll look into it and see if we can see what we come up with.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
All right. What else do we have, Amy?
I don't have anything for you. Just to let you know, it's been exceptionally busy. Nikki had her baby, and I don't know if she had it at the last meeting. I think she did. And we have a temporary assistant who is just dynamite, but just having to get her kind of up to speed on a lot of things and tossing her as much as I can. It's been a lot. I trained the new AmeriCorps crew yesterday on some land management techniques and some, easy kind of power tool training for outdoor stuff. So that was a lot of fun. But that being said, I have not had a chance to finalize the draft for the Herring River Bogs, and I apologize for that. So I don't have anything new for you, anything other than that. Oh, I did send an email. Actually, I'll mention it. I sent an email at the end of the day today with 2 topics, potentially one definitely in violation and one probably in violation, that we came across today. So I'm not going to get into it. You'll hear it at the next meeting, but take a look at my email if you haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll just, as soon as we have your draft on the update to the management plan, I think we'll act fairly quickly to, come to an agreement to hold a public hearing on that. So, I understand it's not a small amount of work to digest the old update and to make a clean copy that can be sent around. So.
Yeah, I want to make it look really good before we send it for public comment. So,
right. Yep. No,
I should be able to have that for October 7th. And I believe at that meeting, we'll have a fuller complement of the board as well.
Good. Okay. All right.
And we don't have minutes. We got to catch up on minutes, but we don't have any minutes tonight.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have anything? This one went awful quick, which is nice now and then. John, do you want to give us a quick update on how your cleaning went at Red River?
Well, aside from injuries sustained in the process, 2 people got apparently wicked cases of poison ivy requiring medical intervention.
Oh boy!
One of whom conveyed the message that they didn't think they were going to do this again next year, which is fine. But otherwise, it looks pretty clean to me. I think downstream from Uncle Vini's, it could use a little trimming, but that's something I could just do like every half an hour myself. Yeah, I don't think, I mean, mostly it's stuff that's leaning back over and falling into the water a little. It's probably not causing any problems, but other than that, it looks pretty good to me.
I think we're on the other side, if I may, John, the other side of the road heading towards the pond, we should talk to Heinz. It really needs some serious cutting back between the pond and the road.
So Tyler mentioned that as well. So,
yeah. And
Heinz did send an email after we did the clean out that he would participate in the second operation this fall. He probably had that up in mind, upstream part in mind as well. So I don't know, Brad, do you have, or Amy, do you have a notion of when the right time to do that is?
Well, I think the fall could be reasonable. I think Amy had, I guess, concerns about when they drop the seeds, but we've already gone past that, right, Amy?
Yeah, I'm not as concerned about Phragmites farther upstream. It's more just the massive amount of other growth that's kind of coming across the river. So I wouldn't be concerned about frag. We just want to make sure that we're not doing it when the fry are coming down.
Right.
Necessarily. It would have been good to hit it maybe a little bit earlier, but at this point it is flowing. So I would say after the herring have come down.
Yeah, no, it's probably better for all interests because plant growth will drop off a little bit, bugs will drop off. It's always better to work when it's cooler. And yeah. I would say go on Heinz's recommendation. He's got the local knowledge on the juvenile emigration. And then I'd be happy to participate whenever that is. If it's, early October, late October, something like that. I think it wouldn't take a lot of effort to get in there and make a difference. And then I think if we can sustain that annually, can really get ahead of it.
So whose property is that?
The river is ours. The waterway itself, we take care of, but we have, actually technically private property owners would own up to the bank, but like on Herring River, it's never been an issue in the upper reaches for the town to keep it clear. I think isn't it kind of required, Brad?
Well, it's funny. In recent years, there's been some pushback at some Concoms, and I've worked on this issue probably in 15 different communities. And really, property owners are responsible to maintain the run. And so it could come down to individual property owners, but typically the town takes it on as something they do to keep the herring run going. And so what I've done in a lot of towns recently, working in my day job for the Division of Marine Fisheries, is I draft stream maintenance plans that are then brought before the conservation commissions, and they've approved them almost exclusively either by in-meeting vote or administratively. And really what that does is it just kind of lays down a plan for what should be done. And it means, you don't want to overcut. And so that's really what you do. You don't want people to take too much canopy or riparian buffer. But it's really the responsibility of the property owners. In practice, it has been the towns that take it on, usually the Department of Natural Resources. And I could bring in some examples or send you guys examples of stream maintenance plans that I've drafted for other towns. In this case, you've got a really proactive Department of Natural Resources, I wouldn't even say they need that plan, but if somebody wanted it, I've had a few Conservation Commissions say that they want that plan before they want their own DNRs to go in working in it. So it's kind of interesting how every town is different. But I would say it's a responsibility because these rivers often don't have the surface flows they used to flush things out. And then we've got invasive plants growing all over the place. So I think now more than ever, there has to be some annual maintenance. So, I'll send you a couple plans, Amy, and you can put them in the Dropbox. I don't even know if it's necessary in this case, but they're pretty simple. They just have good practices on using hand tools only. Don't remove woody debris that can be habitat for insects, but remove debris jams that can block fish passage.
That'd be good to have.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that Heinz has in the past taken AmeriCorps people down that herring run in the spring, though, more than in the fall, to clear out the sorts of things I guess that you're talking about, Brad. But
he does.
So how should we proceed here? I'm happy to just try to prompt Heinz, send him an email and suggest that, I could work with him to pull together a crew or something. And it doesn't take that many people, I don't think, unless the job is significantly different from what we did downstream.
You know what? No, if I can just, chime in, interrupt you quickly. He annually has AmeriCorps kids go up and take care of the run that's upstream closer to the pond. And
right.
So they're there every year. I don't think that he necessarily does that lower section.
I see.
And he may not be aware of the choking that Amy just described that's happening. So, by all means, bring it to his attention. Tell him you've got a couple members in the commission that will help out. And I don't know if he has the access to AmeriCorps, folks in the fall or not. But
he could put a project. He can put project proposals in, like I've already done for this core year for our conservation lands.
Yeah.
But so this spring with COVID, everything got really messed up. He may not have had the AmeriCorps members clean out Skinnequit this year, or in the spring of this past year. I think they did Herring River, and that was right before the AmeriCorps was kind of disbanded for that year. So I don't know if they did, if Skinnequit got the TLC this year.
Yeah.
I'd say so. That would be even more reason to try to pull something together for the fall.
Yeah, and I think after the growing season, end of October, early November is perfect timing because you've maximized all the growth for the year, and that way it'll look good it'll be good in the spring.
So there's a dirt way that goes between Skinnequit Lane or whatever the name of that road across from South Chatham Road is, and
Soundview Road. No, not Soundview. I'm sorry. I know what you mean.
Hershey.
Yes.
It connects to Hershey.
Yeah, Hershey. That goes over the Herring Run. So you're talking about the stuff that you're particularly concerned about, what's downstream from there, what's between there and
the road and Uncle Vinny's.
Yeah. Is that it?
That's where Tyler and I thought it was. Well, put it that way, we couldn't get past there.
I see.
So I don't really know how it is farther up, but I just know it's bad, kind of bad right there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, I'll get in touch with Heinz and copy you guys on the email. And
yeah, we can do a little work morning. It is a longer, it's going to be more work than the frag because it's a variety of other invasives that are in there and other vegetation. So it's probably going to be chainsaw work. And it's a longer distance. So instead of hauling stuff out, we're probably going to be looking to pile stuff up farther up on the bank so it doesn't fall into the river. It's probably the way we would do this, because there'd be a lot of debris to haul out, from what I saw. But it's very doable.
Yeah, no, I'm all with Amy on her idea of doing it later in the fall. It's really the perfect time is when things cool off, so count on me. I was working today in Braintree on this very topic, and then yesterday I was working in Duxbury in between meetings. I put in a little bit of time, so it's something that I do quite a bit, and I enjoy it. It's good, honest work.
All right.
All right. Anything else, folks? Stan, you're deep in thought. Anything on your mind? Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Amy. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And thank everyone else. And I guess I'll move that we adjourn.
I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Good night, folks.
Good night.
Good night.